It was a hell of an episode when I can't decide whether to go with a Trick Daddy reference, a Muppet Babies gag, or an incest joke.
Uh, wow. Normally, I'd say just combine all of them to like the happy medium thing. That doesn't work for Viserys, and I don't think that works here because "daddy's incest babies" is not a phrase to be thrown around lightly.
I drink and I know things. That's what I do.
Welcome to Drunk on Dragons, where we discuss each episode of House of the Dragon. I'm your host, Jamie G. Esquire the Fifth, Master of Claims, and I'm here with Magnum Mills to break down Driftmark. This was an episode, dude. I hope you got a stiff one. I hope you're ready to strap on and strap in because we got lots to talk about. The drinks, they must keep flowing here on Drunk on Dragons.
I mean, I guess so. You gotta get a glass. You have a Bill's glass. I have this glass, and then I got one of these things. It's got you got the ball, right? You got the ice ball. It's quite nice. Put it in the thing, and then I either have some little Basil Hayden's bourbon. We got something that is quite nice, and I got a 14-year-old Balvani, also quite nice. Again, got the good glass, the ball, the ice, two multiple good whiskey options. I'm gonna drink Coors Light. Thank you for checking out Drunk on Dragons. Find us wherever you get your pods by searching for Drunk on Dragons, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the good ones. We're there. Same thing on the social media. Just search for Drunk on Dragons. You can find our YouTube channel at JoeBlowFootballShow.com. Thanks again for watching. Strap in, like the man said, and or on preferably the and. You might as well do it all, baby. You're in for the ride.
Please note that here on Drunk on Dragons, we do have a full spoiler show. That's right. We're spoiling everything. Okay. All episodes of House of the Dragon, Game of Thrones, all of it could come up, probably will come up in our discussions. We might occasionally mention a book spoiler, but don't you worry because we're nice people. Okay. We'll give you a heads up if that's about to happen. And if you didn't know, now you know because you've been made aware. Mills, I'm really thirsty for the Basil Hayden. Please pour me a glass.
Oh, it's quite nice. We've already got one. And this isn't Scotland or got one. This is Drunk on Dragons. This is House of the Dragon. And this is episode 7 of season 1, titled Driftmark, originally aired Sunday, October 2nd, 2022. Directed by Miguel Shapotnik. This is the third episode of House of the Dragon he has directed. Written by Kevin Lau. This is his first writing credit on House of the Dragon. And the short plot synopsis is: as the families gather on Driftmark for a funeral, Viserys calls for an end to infighting, and Alicent demands justice.
Oh, yes, did she ever? And Mills, before we attempt to claim our dragons here, okay, what are your initial thoughts on this episode 7?
It was a bit of a roller coaster, right? It's like one of those rides you get on. It starts out kind of slow, it's a little bumpy, and you're like, really? I paid for this? And then you kind of start climbing, and it's like, all right, we're gonna go high. Then what are you gonna do? And then you drop straight down the joint. And that's kind of what we did on that dragon right with Aemond, right? Like that was when the episode, I think, kind of shifted gears a little bit because Game of Thrones, like we're doing the funeral thing, we've done the wedding thing. It felt fairly familiar, but ironically, I think this is maybe Thrones as the show has felt from that time that Aemond approached the dragon until the very end. The episode really didn't stop as far as advancing the plot and kind of paying off both the time jump and a lot of the character stuff they'd set up. So even if you might have some quibbles overall with it being a little bit jarring, maybe how the episode was paced or what have you, I thought it worked really well for me. There was plenty of dragons and there was a fair amount of drinking, including a young prince who was getting it in early, as we will talk about later. JBG, what were your initial thoughts on Driftmark?
Well, I mean, who doesn't like to get hammered at a funeral? I mean, that's number one. And certainly that young prince agreed. I kind of feel pretty similar to you. It started off a little bit slow. I always enjoy the scenery here. I thought it was just, looked again great. Initially here at first, it looked fantastic in terms of, being on the water at Driftwood with the Valerians. I thought that was really cool. You kind of see their flag just a little bit there at the beginning of the episode. Enjoyed that a lot. I didn't necessarily care for how dark it got visually, not just, yes, incest is very dark. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about visually, it was hard to watch a little bit here. It got really dark, and there were a lot of complaints in that final season of Game of Thrones. There was one episode where, I think it was episode 3. I loved the episode. Like, not a single word was spoken. It was just straight up amazing, but it was very dark visually, and this kind of felt like that too. But man, oh man, when this thing started picking up, it picked up, and the whole time, even while it was slow, you just felt like something major was going to boil here. Like, you just knew that something was about to happen. What was it going to be? Is Viserys going to drop dead? Like, there was just so much stuff here that was going to happen. I really enjoyed how this kind of matured this episode throughout the course of it, and I thought that it was a good episode here after, dealing with episode 6, where we basically had a second pilot. Again, it was very good, but a second pilot episode. I thought they got into it here a little bit, and I was pleased with how this thing, matured over the course of the episode and how it ended. And dude, I don't know about you, but I'm pretty fired up to see what's going on in our next episode.
They do leave it in a place, right? And stay tuned towards the end of the episode, or if you want, just look in the comments for the timestamp. We will definitely be talking about some predictions, things like that as we go on. And I think that is better just before we go forward is the darkness thing. It's been an oddly polarizing episode in that most people seem to have liked it, but it gave everyone that flashbacks to, specifically The Long Night, episode 3 of season 8, which was also directed by Miguel Sapochnik. And he actually kind of headed this off in the past, gave the interview, and he said, like, he knew it would look dark. He knew people complained, but it was a creative decision. I think a lot of that is because the CGI for the dragons is always going to look better in the dark. I don't know if they had to do it to this degree, but I think they also wanted to class the sex scene up a little bit, and doing it in the darkness, made it seem classier. You go from like Skinamax to Showtime at least. And so I get why they did it. And again, if you have a good TV, it's one of those things. If you were in a room at night watching it, you turn the lights off, you cover the drapes or whatever, I think it should be okay. If not, maybe just check the settings on your TV. It shouldn't be that bad, but yes, it was a little darker than it probably needed to be.
But how cool was it to see that glow in the dragon as it's about to freaking breathe fire when it was dark like that? I mean, that I guess from that standpoint, that shit was fire, literally. And just like the episode, let's open up with Lena's funeral. Okay. All the characters we know are in attendance. Emotions are running pretty high here. What stood out for you here, Mills?
And dude, Otto is back, not the bus driver from The Simpsons, but Otto Hightower. Not only is he back, he's the hand. You have to think that Allison set this up the whole way. She maybe doesn't have power of attorney over Viserys yet, but she has every power that matters, including control of his blankie. He still has that going around. I mean, seriously, he calls her Emma later in the episode. He seems to be losing his faculties at an alarming pace. That's putting her in a position of power. She's taking advantage of it. I think putting Otto back his hand is one way of doing that. And we also briefly meet Corliss's brother, Vaymond. I'm pretty sure that's how it's pronounced. Shout out, George, with all your weird vowels you like to jam together. We'll be talking about him a little bit more in predictions, like I said, at the end of the episode. Stay tuned for that. And we also learned that Larry Strong is now officially the new Lord of Harrenhal. So his whole burn your father and brother, roast him in the house joint, that worked out well for him. So I'm not sure what kind of message that sends.
Yeah, and to that point with Larry Strong, I kind of realized, like, okay, he had some skin in the game with that too. Maybe it wasn't just I'm a ruthless psychopath. It was more so, hey, I got a little skin in the game. I want to be, in a position too. So that certainly worked out for him. And honestly, you could make a case that maybe he manipulated the queen to get what he wanted more than anything else. Was it awkward to you when Damon started laughing at one point during the Valerian speech there? I mean, I thought that was a little weird. Obviously he's in a, in a weird spot, but laughing at a funeral is usually, off the list of things to do. But then again, so is banging your niece. So who the hell am I to say anything? But I thought that was pretty strange. And I think we're going to get to a point, obviously, as we saw throughout this episode, that Damon's going to become more and more and more of a player here for us. Anything with the kids? I mean, last episode, Mills, we spent a lot of time kind of focusing on this new generation of kids. How did you feel about this one? I mean, other than we saw our boy Aegon just slamming him back, bro.
He is in his cup, so to speak, and we saw Jacaerys, I believe JC's referred to, and he's the eldest child of Rhaenyra, and he basically knows that Sir Harwin Strong, Breakbones, was his dad, so he's kind of mourning, but he's not really allowed to mourn. But even Rhaenyra can't explicitly tell him that, so he's kind of in a weird place. And just like Damon, I think that kind of speaks for this episode, right? Everyone is in a weird place, and when you have people in a weird emotional place, and then they all go to a funeral together, and then they start drinking, weird shit's gonna happen, crazy shit even. And I think that's what we see throughout this episode, and it's both kind of sad for some of the characters we like, exciting for others, but a lot of fun in a screwed up why we used to love and currently love Game of Thrones and House of Dragon kind of way.
Yes, it was. And we once again get a scene with Rhaenys and Corlys here regarding his ambitions. And here, we see Rhaenys call him out for wanting the Iron Throne for his own power and status. She's been kind of flirting around this notion basically the entire series so far. And she finally comes out and just says it. And she also suggests having Driftmark pass through Lyanna's line, not Lenore's line. So that basically then, it's actual Valyrian blood in their veins that will rule the family's ancestral seat. What do you think here, the conflict, within kind of internally with House Valyrian?
I mean, it's screwed up, right? Because you had your daughter die, and then Rhaenys will admit it and Corlys won't, that those aren't really our grandchildren. Like, they might bear our name and family patronage, but they're not our blood. And that's why she says a thing about the line pass. And Corlys even talks about that. Like, people don't remember blood, they remember the name. I mean, that's kind of like the Jay-Z ethos to this. And it makes sense, right? Like, we've seen it be hinted very strongly that Rhaenys was kind of like past this shit, right? Like, yes, she got passed over. Yes, she thought she would have been a good queen, but she abandoned that. And Corlys is that dude, like, telling himself, right? Like, oh yeah, like, I'm doing this for her. I'm doing this for her. And then finally she's like, dude, just admit it. You're not doing this for me. You're doing this for you. And I think especially where, we'll get to them later in the episode or even in predictions, really, now that they've theoretically lost both of their children, like, man, like, where does that put them at the time they need to be most together? They might be the most divided they've ever been.
Yeah, for sure. And we see it kind of later on in this episode too, where she straight up pushes him away when something else tragic happens for them. So I was not necessarily surprised, Mills, that Corlys was like okay with the fact that hey, those may not be our biological blood grandchildren, but you get the sense he is all on board with making sure Rhaenyra gets the throne and those kids get the throne after. And that means more to him than whether or not it was actually his son that, bloodline in those kids. So I thought that was an interesting development here, where his focus is not on whether or not the DNA matches. It's more so that the Valyrian name is that much closer to the Iron Throne.
Yeah, and you get that kind of heartbreaking line, I think it is by Luke, when he's talking about, oh, you'll be the Lord of the, the King of the Driftmark throne and the Lord of the Tides or whatever. And he's like, I don't want that. He's like, why? He's like, because if I have that means everyone else is dead. Like, sometimes the kids get right to the heart of it, right? We've seen almost all the kids to a fault. When asked, they're like, well, then I'll just be out in this ruling shit. Like, they just want to be like the trust fund babies, right? They don't want to actually have to sit on like a real board or even do like that kind of work. They would just like, no, just let me like do my, Spalding and Caddyshack kind of deal, and I'm cool with that. And just let me pick a burger and, go find Rodney Dangerfield.
the Beatles have Let It Be, and Drunk on Dragons, well, we have BE. That's right. You know what it is. When you see two people looking at each other and just you can tell that they're going to head for the nearest Motel 6. Well, that baby, that's that BE. That banging energy. And Mills, we finally got it. Here we see Damon and Rhaenyra finish what they started a decade plus ago. We kind of knew this was going to happen eventually, right? But they had some eyes here where you knew there was some BE in the air.
Well, and to put it in Motel 6 parlance, he left the light on for her. But to his credit, she controls the whole thing, right? They walk on the beach, and I thought it was really interesting. Well, this is the first time, but not the last time in the episode, we hear Rhaenyra discuss it. Like, remember, like her and Leno were like, they were supposed to like have heirs, but then they could do their thing on the side. But then she had to have the side piece heirs. They tried, apparently. For what it's worth, they at least tried. So I think that has kind of some impact on maybe how you view the fact that her children are viewed as bastards or whatever. Like, I mean, if her husband was physically incapable, they wouldn't be the first couple to turn to, outside methods to have a child. So I don't think that's crazy. And then, after this Sir Harwin thing, Damon's pretty quick to pick up on like, yeah, that was definitely not a natural fire. Like maybe other people had thought it, but he's the one who, puts it to words right away, showing that both, I think he is a pretty smart cookie and, maybe that's what he would have done.
Yeah, and just I'll give him a little bit of credit. I was for a minute I was like, is he going to be able to get it up for this? Because the last time they flirted with this, going to the Motel 6, when he realized she was in it, he was no longer into it. She really was kind of leading the cause here and kind of driving the pony, so to speak, because he even was like, Rhaenyra, I mean, he's fresh off. I mean, shit, dude. Lena's, barely, I mean, I was gonna say not even cold yet, but she was burnt to a crisp, so that really doesn't work. But you get my point, okay? She was just literally buried, or put to the ocean, from the sea back to the sea here, and he's out there, banging his knee. So they bang, they bang. Ooh, baby, when they move, they move. We had BE, and boy, oh boy, Magnum Mills, it came to fruition. And look, is this Lord of the Flies or House of the Dragon? First, Aemon finally makes his move and claims Vhagar. Big, big, big deal. The oldest and largest dragon in the world. Let's just talk about that scene for a second here, bro, because it was pretty wild, right?
Were you doing Ricky Martin she bangs or William Hung she bangs? I couldn't quite tell, but there was a she and there were bangs. Yeah, dude, that was some crazy dragon shit. And again, this is one that I had an idea of what was happening from book knowledge, but the way they filmed it was awesome. And I forget, I was listening to another pod and they pointed out that probably the reason that we never saw Lena claim Vhagar is because it would have been like you would have done that scene, which would have had to been cool. And then how do you top it? Like you would have had to like do this again. So I think seeing it once made a lot of sense. And I think setting it up well with Aemon in the last episode, kind of being unable to claim the dragon, right down to kind of give him the Valerian words and everything, and seeing him do it here and kind of, shaking that, fear and loathing and losing the fear and just kind of going in there. And I give the credit, man. He rocked up there. No one saw that coming. It was a bold move. You see later in the episode how impressed Otto is with it. And like, I don't think I've ever seen Otto Hightower impressed before. Even Rhys Ifans, like he's been in a lot of things. I still can't even think of a movie where the dude's ever been impressed. Maybe it's never even happened in real life. Who knows? But yeah, dude, I thought the claiming scene was pretty great. And then, he flies. I had any thoughts yourself on the claiming?
I thought it was really cool. For a minute, for a split second, I thought he had spied Rhaenyra and Daemon, and then I was like, okay, that probably wouldn't really matter even if he did. But then I realized that he's going after the dragon. I thought it was just so cool how much space the dragon took up on that beach, how large and imposing it was. Again, seeing that fire start in its core was so cool. I really enjoyed him climbing, you realize what a climb that is to climb up the side of this dragon, just because of how huge, Vagar is. And so this was a big deal. I love the shaking off the sand. For some reason, I just thought that was so cool. Just put into perspective how huge this dragon is. And when we were in the Game of Thrones era and realm, we didn't really see we never really saw anything like this, right? We saw a little bit of kind of starting to kind of like be accepted by dragons, but we never saw like dragons straight up like being under your control and claiming one. So I thought that was really cool. Obviously flying was really cool. I liked how, kind of dealing with the sheer power of it. I think they did a good job showing that, where he's hanging on the rope a little bit. So this was a really, really, really cool scene. And again, shot incredibly. Some of those scenes you just see when the wingspan is out, just how absolutely massive Vagar is. So really cool.
Again, I think that's one thing that's been universal, is the idea that they scaled it up. Like, you get the idea just how big this dragon is. And they did some Top Gun shit, right? Like they did, if you haven't seen Top Gun Maverick, minor spoilers, but they did the high joint followed by the traumatic deep drive, and then like the flying low. We talked about earlier in the year that we wanted to see some Top Gun shit. I don't know, maybe Tom Cruise was secretly in there. Someone else is going to have to freeze frame it or whatever. But I thought it was impressive, and it just showed you like this kid is going to be something, right? And he was tested, like just barely hanging on, and that makes you wonder, how did like Daenerys or anybody else ever, like, should someone have come up with a saddle? Like, even then, like, remember when Bran got hurt at the beginning of the series? Like, Tyrion's all ready to like show him how to make a saddle so a cripple could ride a horse, and you're telling me he couldn't have come up with a saddle for Daenerys, for Drogon? Big plot hole there, I'm saying. Like, it makes me,
Yeah, I like that they've come further with this as they've moved on in the world of developing the dragons. This is when things turn douchey with Aemond, right? He returns from his dragon ride, and he's definitely feeling himself, and all hell breaks loose here, right? I mean, Rhaena, Baela, Jace, Luke, they're all waiting for him when he returns. Rhaena feels violated because Vagar was her mother's dragon, and she had planned on claiming her. Well, things, quickly get ugly here, and he's like, you should have claimed her first. I'm sorry. Sir Harold Westerling shows up, but not before Luke slashes Aemon across the face with a dagger. Dude, in between your drinks here, because this is Drunk on Dragons, take a big one and let me know, what did you think of this episode of Tiny Targaryens?
One of my favorite Tiny Toons spinoffs, I guess. And we should just say, shout out that Aegon isn't here because he is fucking hammered, and he just kind of like passes out in the steps of, it's not a parking garage, but it's basically the Driftmark equivalent to the parking garage. And Otto comes up on him, and like there is just pure Tywin Lannister against Joffrey, like, yo, kid, get your fucking shit, like go home and get your shine box type of definitely that really doesn't come up anywhere else. It's just kind of a random interstitial scene, but explains why he isn't there. And both that, like, yeah, dude, like he is still like a 14-year-old kid who's just getting hammered and legitimately doesn't care about anything because he's a 14-year-old rich kid getting hammered. So, shout out, that's fun for him. But we thought he was King Dickhead, right? Like Aegon was King Dickhead. And right after Aemon makes his claim, like, give dude credit. It's not BE. He's got that BDE now. Like, he comes in and like he is just self-assured, like crazy. Now, to his credit, he basically fights off all the other kids before he takes it across the eye. And even then he's like, nah, I got big dragon energy now. Like, I don't need that eye. I got big dragon energy.
And you know what? He's right. It is worth it. Like, yeah, he's gonna have a terrible scar, and yeah, he's missed an eye, but shit, dude, he's got the largest, oldest dragon in the world. It was kind of dirty.
He's the dude who was getting the pig last episode, you know what I mean? So he even tells them, oh, your cousins, maybe they can find a pig for you. Like, just like that, man. He goes
just like that, the tables
turn. Yo, couch.
Right. It was pretty shitty, though. I mean, dude, it's the mom's funeral. She's mourning her mom. She didn't have a chance to go out and claim it. I thought it was a little bit done dirty here, but hey,
sneaky.
man.
It was sneaky.
It was sneaky, but these are the times. I enjoyed this fight scene. I thought there was some good tension here with the holding up the rock, and I liked it. Again, you felt like something was going to bubble over this entire episode. Here we finally see it bubble over.
Did it bother you at all to see kids fighting like this? Like, that's why I referenced Lord of the Flies, because, or even if you've watched Yellow Jackets at all, actually pretty solid if you want to check it out. Season 2 won't come up for a while, but season 1 of Yellow Jackets, definitely a Lord of the Flies thing. It was, I mean, kind of disturbing, but I thought they did it really well. And it's going to, I guess pay off, because we have to care about these children. Like, these are like the Game of Thrones kids. They're going to be who's important. You know what I mean? You're not worried about Ned Stark. You're worried about Jon Snow. And this is kind of that dynamic, I think.
It really is. And I don't know, man. I think it did two things for me. One, it helped me kind of start to pick sides. And I know that I should not go back to Game of Thrones and be like, okay, well, the blonde-headed kids look like Lannisters, so I'm just they're assholes and they're terrible, and the brown-headed kids look like Starks and they're good, and I'm gonna go. But dude, for a little bit here, I kind of feel bad for Jason Luke, right? Like, I kind of feel bad for them, man. Like, being called, he crossed a line here. Aemon crossed a line here in calling out their parentage to Luke, who did not know about that at all. That was a pretty shitty thing to do. This started to let me, like, not full blown choose sides, but you start to kind of see this divide between these two groups of kids. And I thought this scene did a good job demonstrating that.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there, and we'll talk on it a little bit later in the episode. It's kind of a little minor book spoiler thing or whatever, but it does seem like the show is trying to make it a bit easier for people to pick sides, as opposed to keeping it like truly ambiguous where there's like no one to root for, because sometimes that's difficult at the end. Like, we're all rooting for Tony Soprano despite all of the horrible stuff we knew that he did, to the point where I just remember, minor spoilers for The Sopranos, yada yada yada. Like, in the finale, like the FBI agents like cheering when they get Frank Vincent's character and shit like that. Like, it's just like, yeah, you gotta root for him. Except for when AJ Jr. ties a cinder block to his joint and jumps in the pool.
Tony.
Then root for Tony to be distracted by some Gumar throwing a big thing of meat at his head.
All this over some gabagool. He should have been over at the Bada Bing. Anyways, if you thought that was all hell breaking loose, well, you thought wrong, dude. Okay, because all the kids are immediately, brought before King Viserys, and everybody shows up here, and Viserys yells a lot, and absolutely nobody listens to him, like, at all. There's so much shit going on here. The issue of Rhaenyra's children being bastards is brought up. Alicent wants an eye for an eye, literally, and she winds up drawing blood from Rhaenyra with the dagger. Okay, the legendary dagger that in Game of Thrones takes out the Night's King. Mills, unpack this thing, dude. Where do we even start here?
They drew first blood, not you.
Wait, what?
They drew first blood.
What is that? Is that Rambo?
Who drew first blood?
You doing a Rambo thing?
There is an argument here, right? Whether it's a Rambo thing or who did draw first blood. And that's all what it comes down to. In, I think, the way, like you said, to make it sympathetic, the show presents it like Aemon kind of stole Vhagar. Even though in theory, the whole Targaryen thing is like, you claim the dragon, it's your fucking dragon. Like, that's their whole deal. Like,
right.
He even tells her, like, if it tells Rhaenyra, like, or excuse me, Rhaena. He tells Rhaena that if you wanted your mom's dragon, you need to go claim your mom's dragon. Like, that's how it works in Westeros, and give the kid credit. Like, he lost the eye, took the ride. He did what he had to do, and shout out, his sister Helena, like the bug girl. She has been quietly predicting this. So she's a dreamer, like Viserys always wanted to be. Again, this is something that's not really explored in the books like that. So I'm curious as to where the show is going to go with that. And yeah, dude, it's kind of crazy with the bastard thing, right? Because Viserys is like, all right, Aemon, tell me who told you they were bastards. And he's like, Aegon did. And then he's like, Aegon, tell me who told you they were bastards. He's like, dude, do you have fucking eyes? Like, my brother just lost an eye over there, and he can still see this shit. Like, literally everyone knows. And Viserys is like, you shall never speak of this again. Like, talking about willfully fucking ignorant.
Well, and to his credit, he's ride or die, dude. I like see. I'm on the side here where I actually have a little bit of respect for Viserys with this. He committed to his daughter that he was going to make her heir, and he is not going to let anything get in the way of that. And even know that she has bastards or whatever, I still credit him for sticking with that, dude. Like I just, a man with conviction is a man that I like, good or bad. So I'm a fan of this for him. He's trying to do what he thinks is right, which is bring this family together. He has a desire to have a loving family, but the cold hard reality as it is he's never going to have that, because he has a wife who has moved past the thought of that. She has accepted things fully for what she thinks they are, and that is she is at war to try to make sure her and her children end up on that throne. And Viserys is trying to keep everything as one hunky-dory family, and it just doesn't work. So I thought this was really good. It kind of had that same energy of like at the wedding, right? At Rhaenyra's wedding, where it was just like total chaos, and it's like, what the hell's going on? But you start to see, even as king, he's kind of lost his ability to kind of instill fear. I mean, Alicent, bro, she went off the deep end here. I mean, you got to believe if that was Robert Baratheon, would he ever have allowed that? I mean, this is just crazy to me that she went that rogue, and he just will speak no more of it, was just basically okay with it. I mean, she straight up gashed Rhaenyra here, dude. I mean, that's assault against the princess future heir.
Again, it all depends on what your definition of first blood is. But yeah, I mean, I think people probably a long time ago, probably somewhere in the middle of the time jump, just basically stopped paying Viserys any mind, because the dude was never like that particularly impressive to begin with. Like, he wasn't a great warrior, a great orator. He didn't just have like all that natural charisma like a Robert Baratheon. He was just kind of like, all right, he was appointed, and like nobody hates him, right? He's that guy, like he's nobody's best friend, but nobody hates him. He's just that guy. And that's not necessarily who you want as a king. There's certain times that might work, but here he's on the fucking pay no mind list, and it's like ridiculous. And everyone basically, like, the fact that he won't acknowledge that his, the whole situation with Rhaenyra's sons being bastards, it basically just delegitimizes him to everybody else. In doing so, delegitimizes the crown, which actually screws Rhaenyra over like twice over, because she's supposed to be the heir to it. And now it's like illegitimate because she's a daughter and because she has illegitimate sons. I'm not saying can't win if you, damned if you do, damned if you don't, but we saw that, or heard at least, that she tried. Her and Lander tried to have, correct, here on the show, the bastards are natural born, but they tried to do their thing and produce proper heirs, and it didn't work. So I don't know. You kind of feel bad for her. Like, she tried, right?
Yeah, and the thing is too, though, man, I felt bad for her kids in this scene. It's not their fault. They had no choice over this whatsoever. I was worried for them. I think that it was totally inappropriate of Alicent wanting to do that. And I felt bad for them, and I was proud of Viserys for not calling them out and making them feel like they're not wanted or they don't belong, just because, we started talking about Trick Daddy at the beat. Trick love the kids, bro. And I love the kids, man. And so I thought that was messed up. And I'm glad that they kind of got a little bit of relief there, even though if it's just temporary. They're gonna have to face that, and it sucks for them. The other thing of this here is, I've lost a lot of respect for Kristen Cole. I mean, the dude went from like falling in love, having sex, wanting to get married, getting rejected, to now just a scorned lover for life. Like, bro, get over it, dude. Like, what is your problem? I mean, this dude's just a total douche, in my opinion, and I thought it was really cool where he tries to kind of intervene, and Daemon just steps right in and is like, nah, son, he ain't having this.
Daemon just grips him, right? Is that like payback for
Yeah.
the tournament years ago? Has Daemon been like, he's doing his Pilates and his planks and all his shit? Is he just like Kristen Cole's trying to go in to at least pull Alicent back? And Daemon's like, nah, dog, Like he just grips him like one armed and no armor, no nothing. So, all right, stay tuned for predictions because we'll have more stuff to talk about that.
Yes, we will. And Allison, man, she seems a bit shook by her actions here. Post her cutting Rhaenyra and losing her shit, so to speak. And when Otto talks to her, you get the sense like, man, she thinks he's just gonna, just completely be upset with her and admonish her for her actions, right? But not at all. Old Papa Otto is actually proud of her with a capital P, okay? He didn't know that she had that level of feist, fire, just rebellion, I guess you could say, for lack of a better word, asshole-ish in her. Were you surprised by Otto's attitude here, Magnum Mills? Because I gotta be honest with you, I'm not at all. I think Otto has been trying to get this out of her for years. And he's like, I finally succeeded as a dad.
1, chutzpah. 2, panache. 3, that's what she said. I mean, yes, Otto has been trying to get out of her for years, but that's really a marital issue. We do need to go into that here. But you got that feeling, right? Like Alicent felt a little guilty. Like she's like, oh shit, maybe I went too far. I honestly get the sense from her and Rhaenyra that both of them would ideally like to come together on this somehow, but neither wants to be the first one to offer the bridge. And so it just is become an inadvertent Cold War, basically. But yeah, dude, when Otto comes in and you're kind of like, shit, because you kind of got the idea before, like, oh, maybe Otto is, fairly pure as far as intentions or whatever. And he's like, girl, that shit was awesome. Not even the whole green dress thing, but just like, yeah, you definitely like stole the king's Valerian steel dagger out his belt, cut his daughter in the heir to be. Totally cool. This is the right track. Yeah, dude, this is a whole new Otto. Love what this could do going forward. So we'll definitely, again, have stuff to say about this in predictions.
In the final stretch of the episode, House of the Dragon, it seems to be coming into its own. Laenor apologizes to Rhaenyra and vows to do better. Rhaenyra takes that in and basically decides to ask Daemon to marry her. Of course, that would require the death of Laenor, which she obviously premeditated and thought about. Daemon appears to arrange for him to die at the hands of Sir Carl. With him out of the picture, they have a good old-fashioned blood wedding. As the episode ends, we see that they actually faked Lenor's death. He's got the shaved head, and he and Carl are headed across the sea to parts unknown. I mean, double day, right? Double day.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't think that was the greatest love in history, but were you surprised? I think that's right where we can go, because in the book, it seems pretty obvious that Laenor is actually killed. They leave him alive here. Again, we'll speculate on the future of that in predictions, but were you surprised at the end when you kind of get like, oh shit, he's still alive? And like they did the shaved head thing for him, which I get for like a disguise, but like we never even saw like the hair or anything on like the corpse. I thought they would have maybe made that more prominent or something.
I was a little surprised here because it's like I didn't necessarily see the value in it, but now that they showed it, I'm excited about it because now this adds a whole new twist of like, okay, this is something where it's like, shit, dude, this could become a thing going forward where it's like that could rear its head and cause major, major, major problems. So I like that. But I was a little bit surprised, to be honest with you, that it was a big fake. And my question is it ironclad that Daemon and Rhaenyra were okay with the fake and they planned the fake, or did the fake happen between Sir Carl and Laenor without Rhaenyra? And I think that's a more interesting question. Does Rhaenyra and Daemon even know that fake happened, or were they crossed by Sir Carl?
From my understanding, they were all in on it. And I think that makes sense when you heard the way Rhaenyra talked about, like, when Laenor's like, oh, like, I wish God had made me this way. And she's like, no, I think you're a good man or whatever. And so I think that whole, it's a case of probably, my guess is like one line or something got left on the cutting room floor that made it slightly ambiguous. But from my understanding, that was the whole setup with the one witness, and he runs away, and then they have that body and they throw it in the fire. Dude shaves his head, yada yada yada. Bob's your uncle. We're headed off to Pentos, rich AF.
I like what's going on here, and that shows a gentler side to Damon and Rhaenyra that maybe I didn't know existed. And I think Rhaenyra feels bad that things worked out the way they did with Laenor, but dude, she's locked in here on her life with Damon, right? And how long before she has some seriously messed up little incest babies, right? I mean, you got to believe that day's coming. And the blood wedding, I didn't understand the whole lip forehead thing, but it was gross.
Very Targaryen. Like, that's so Targaryen, I guess, is the best way I can go.
So Targaryen.
The only thing I can think of is when he was over in Pentos for 10 years, just reading all those books or whatever. I'm assuming this is some sort of like old school official Targaryen wedding that makes it like super duper legal, even if like it's not technically legal kind of deal.
So maybe it's a little old school, nude school you need to learn, though. I burn, baby, burn, like Disco Inferno. They're married, bro. I mean, this was a big deal, and it's got me very excited about the future of the show. And that about covers the major players. Anything else that you want to talk about, Mills, before we move on to basically the rest of the episode here?
I think you just have to stay tuned and watch us hand out some hardware, and then for predictions, because there's a lot of predicting to be had. Actually, the one thing, shout out again, Ramin Djawadi's score here was fucking on point. Music was great, always is. So I forget about it sometimes, but seriously, here, dude, you've outdone yourself. I don't listen to like a ton of scores or whatever sometimes, but I will if I ever, working out or doing something or thinking or whatever. And Ramin Djawadi, like, love your shit, dog.
Yeah, good shit all the way. I thought it was fantastic. And again, it's so good. Sometimes you don't even notice it. It's like a good offensive line. It's like you don't notice it until, the quarterback starts getting hit. So this was fantastic. Really good point there, Magnum Mills. And I guess we need to go ahead. It's come to the time, buddy, where we got to ask the most important question. Okay. And we take this extremely serious here on Drunk on Dragons. I mean, this is the whole point of our podcast. And we got to ask, was there enough drinking and dragons in this episode titled Driftmark? Yay or nay? As Magnum Mills pours himself another drinky poo.
Oh, I think it has to be yes. I mean, most of the drinking comes from like shitty ass Aegon, but weren't we all stupidly in our cups at that age? Like, yeah, maybe he takes it a touch too far or whatever, but probably best dragon so far, right? At least, to be perfectly honest, they're just like, we're not there yet with the on the dragon, make it look completely realistic or whatever. We're not quite there yet, but I like the aesthetic of it. The way it was shot early when Aemon's trying to climb on and they make it seem so huge. And then even though it's a little janky at night when he's flying, but the idea of it, I liked what they did. I like the actor's performance, and it definitely looked better than when they tried that same stuff on Thrones with Daenerys, especially early on. So yes, I am quite content with the drinking in Dragons in Driftmark. Jamie G.
Could have used a smidge more drinking. I wanted to see like a freaking Irish funeral or a goddamn a gypsy funeral here is what I was looking for. But
some Peaky Blinders.
A little Peaky Blinder gypsy funeral. I mean, drink it away, but that's okay because I am with you. I thought the dragons were awesome. And here's something in all seriousness. This was the first time I think so far this show, this series where we got more than one or two dragons together. I thought it was awesome as like the dragons were parked, as they are all kind of sitting there from all the riders that showed up to this funeral. I thought that was super cool, dude. Seeing 5 or 6 of these things parked, like everybody parked their freaking Mercedes and Bentleys out front. I thought that's what this was, and super cool. So I'm really satisfied. I think we're getting just enough. They're not blowing their wad. We know we've got at least a season 2, probably a season 3 and 4. So you don't want to just whip it out all the way and blow it right here in the first 6-7 episodes. It's been a steady build. I think it's definitely going to be a grower, not a shower, and I'm excited about it. But you know what, guys? Feel free to raise a cup, have a drink for Christ's sakes. After all, you're living in the realm. Like, have a drinky poo. Now with that said, it is time to hand out the awards for our favorite parts of Driftmark, starting with that hot D, that hot dialogue, which is our favorite quote or bit of dialogue from the episode. Mills, I'm going to go first here. I'm going to go with that scene with Rhaenys and Corlys, where he basically pushes back on her when she's trying to get, Lena's bloodline to stay at Driftmark and have it run through there, because she is kind of coming to grips with the fact that the bloodline isn't pure with Rhaenyra and their son Laenor. And I think the interesting thing here is when he looks at her and he says,
history does not remember blood. It remembers names.
is that not just an overarching theme of the entire Game of Thrones universe? And I just thought that was so powerful and profound. And it shows that, House Valerian, it's not as united as maybe you think. And I think the death of two children is going to even tear that down even further. And it's going to push him closer to what he believes is right and push her farther away to what she believes is right. I think that that's a big thing looming. And I think that dialogue, that bit, that hot D, that's going to go a long way here.
Yeah, that's right out there in your dog shit. Now you're into big things. And I mean, think about it. How many times did you hear the name House Valerian in Game of Thrones? Pretty sure it's a 0. So maybe Corlys is right. You might be onto something there. For me, I have to go with a line that it kind of is a callback to the books, but it's so perfect. And that's at the end of that whole scene where after the kids fight, they bring him into the throne room there. And Viserys yells at him and no one pays attention. And Alicent wants revenge, but she finally settles. And Aemon says,
"It was a fair exchange. I may have lost an eye, but I gained a dragon."
As we see Otto Hightower allude to a little bit later, yep, that was a more than equitable exchange. Dragons, really cool. Eyes, not that necessary, especially when you see how good you can look with an eye patch. It's surprising how many motherfuckers look pretty fucking decent, maybe even better in an eye patch.
That brings us to the hot fire of the week, presented by Dialogue.
Because I spit hot fire.
This is our favorite moment or scene from Driftmark. Mills, you're up first here.
Boy, there are definitely a couple of ways you could go here, and I thought about going with something more subtle, but man, I have to go with the dragon claiming scene, the dragon flying scene. They saved a lot of that CGI budget for that. Like, they kind of set up Aemond as a dope. That was a scene that had a lot of high expectations, especially for book readers. I think they did a really good job of it. One of the better, if not the best, kind of dragon riding scene in the history of Thrones. Enjoyed that very much. So that's where I'm going with that one.
And for me, I've got to go with that scene when all hell breaks loose. I mean, I just, after the kids, the tiny Targaryen fight, I got to go with that scene where all hell breaks loose. I thought that was just absolutely a pinnacle kind of pivot point for this show, for the series, for the season, for sure. And it just all season, all episode long, rather, you're just waiting for something to kind of, boil over, and we got it here in this scene. So I thought it was fantastic, really enjoyed it, and huge shit that happens there that's going to move the chess pieces, more and more and more and more.
Dude, this is the House of the Dragon, but I mean, even more so now than ever. It is very obvious that everyone is still playing the Game of Thrones. I mean, Otto even basically comes within like an inch of saying the name. So now what we have to do is decide on our player of the week, and that is the episode MVP for Driftmark. Jamie G, who is your episode MVP?
Boy, this is really tough here because you can make a case for several people. There was a lot of kind of shifting of, people making power plays here, so to speak. But I can't not give it to Aemond here, right? I mean, the dude claimed the biggest, largest, oldest, most powerful dragon in the fucking realm. And yeah, he lost an eye, but dude, you can just see his swagger, dude. He's basically Jimmy Swagoo here. I mean, this dude is filled with swag. He's got it. I mean, this is a lifelong thing that he's got now. And so you just get the sense that he is going to be somebody. And yeah, he went from kind of getting the prank played on him with the pig to kind of being the bullshit brother that's really not going to be anything, to now all of a sudden he's got the biggest, baddest, oldest dragon in the realm. Yeah, that's a power move. Giving him my MVP.
I'd like to make a couple of half-assed arguments or whatever, but I think once again, Aemond, clear MVP here. I mean, from where he went last episode to where he goes here, and minor spoiler alert, I'm not going to say anything particular, but he may or may not show up in the teaser for next episode. I think dude's on the come up, clear winner here. I mean, otherwise, it's really hard to even go with anybody. I guess maybe Daemon, but nah, dude. Aemond, full stop, full on, unanimous MVP for Driftmark.
He the real MVP. And we did not officially attend the Citadel, not officially, but I once bought someone a pair of jeans from Citadel outlets. So that should be enough to qualify us to grade this episode, Driftmark, right? For the record, we each grade each episode of House of the Dragon on a scale of 1 to 10 dragons. And I guess you're up first here, big dog. I'm going to let you give this thing the grade, and I will follow suit.
So Europe, not like National Lampoon's European Vacation or Europe, the Final Countdown, just straight up Europe, like Aaron Judge trying to hit a 60-second home run. Man, this is a tough one because it did start out a little bit slow. The pacing wasn't the greatest, but I think I'm going to make this my favorite episode of House of the Dragon so far. I think because at the end it felt like you were right back in the Game of Thrones universe. So I'm going 9.2 dragons. Jamie G, you riding with me, or tell me what you're thinking about grading this episode based on that one time you bought someone you may or may not have been dating jeans from the Citadel outlets. That's
may or may not be a true story. I am riding with you. I'm part of Rough Riders Dragon. I'm going for it all the way here, dude. I'm right there. I'm also gonna crack the 9s. I'm just gonna tie you here. I'm gonna say 9.2 as well. I thought it was fantastic. It started a little slow. The whole darkness scene there was, maybe it was a smidge too dark. But dude, I thought this episode was fantastic. It moved things along further than we've had to move in any of the previous episodes. Visually, it was fucking awesome. I haven't been this excited going into the following episode since ever with this show. I've granted it's only been 7 episodes, but still, this is the most hype I am going into the next one. I'm just really happy with what's happening here, and I cannot wait to see what's next. I can't wait for predictions. I'm right there with you, buddy. 9.2 dragons.
Well, you're not taking this back to 92, but are you? I mean, is this like were you doing, like you said, darkness? You're not doing like a Prince and Charlie Murphy thing, right? Like, because
darkness. Right? Get over here. No, I'm not.
Very cool. Everyone just, get your blouses on, get your
shout out Rick James, dude.
Ready. James.
Rest in peace.
Seriously, a lot of rest in pieces. Julio, Rick James back again. Just very sorry for all those who passed. But that brings us to one of our favorite parts of House of the Dragon, Game of Thrones. That's who's gonna die. Or just in general, making theories, predictions, just speculating. I mean, that's the fun stuff, right? You keep back in the day, like in the heat of Game of Thrones, you just be like at a bar, at a party, whatever. You start talking with someone, and it's like, oh man, what do you think is going to happen with Arya or whatever? And that was always so much fun. So we're all about that here. For the record, we are going to be talking about the sneak peek, the little 1-minute preview for the next episode that HBO has dropped. If you don't want to be spoiled by that, check out now. Thank you for checking out Drunk on Dragons. We'll be back right here, same time, same drunk channel, same dragon stuff, all that next week. Do that. Otherwise, it's time to do the thing. Jamie G, are you ready for another time jump?
Boy, oh boy. I think I just have to be. I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. They've done each time jump, I think, with grace. It hasn't been terrible, and there's been some significant ones. I'm excited to see what they'll do with the characters, how they'll look. We got obviously a little snippet in the preview, leading up, but I'm ready for it, bro. But the one looming question is, will this time jump include all the characters that we now know?
Well, from what I understand, this is just a case of where kind of all the kids we saw are going to get aged up when everyone else will basically stay the same. So definitely not a 10-year jump. Think more like 3-4 years, but
3 to
with
5.
with kids in puberty, it makes sense that they'll have to up jump them a bit, especially to make, say, like a kid like Aemond or even Aegon, who seemed pretty young here. Like we watched them fight, and it was kind of disturbing, right? So I think it'll make it, if not more interesting, at least more palatable if they look a little bit older. In the preview, it looks apparent that Otto is sitting on the throne, like in his capacity as hand, as Ned Stark once did. Do you think he's going to take advantage of that, as far as Team Hightower?
1,000 million billion trillion, yes. He is taking advantage of it, guarantee you. And he's never been happier than sitting his ass on that throne. And yes.
Will he do so overtly or on the creep?
I think just knowing Otto, it'll be on the creep, but it'll be well calculated though, and he won't be afraid of being bold. But I think it will be on the creep because above all else, he wants to remain, legitimate and keep his legitimacy and have what he's doing appear legitimate.
Because that's the difference now, right? Like Allison can be in on it now. Like it's like when someone finds out that like Bruce Wayne is Batman or whatever, it's like, oh, you can be all in on it. So now he can get Allison like fully into the full on scheming or whatever. I think that's the way I'm going with it as well. And we see in the preview that I'm guessing Daemon and Rhaenyra are at Dragonstone, and they're like, all right, we got to go back to King's Landing. What's their first move when we get there? Like, we know Rhaenyra is in theory the heir. We know Daemon knows like all the flea bottom stuff, the secret passageways. Like, what are they doing? Their first move when they get back to King's Landing? Like, do they even just park in the dragon pit? Do they just roll up, like, pull out their pass? Like, yep, I'm parked dragon here in the dragon pit.
I think they're going to be focused on reining in how, and pun intended with all the Reynas, but reining in kind of what's been happening in terms of people going rogue and make empowerment moves. I think they're going to have to come in immediately and try to show that they're not going to go down without a fight. And I think they'll both be ready for that, but they'll do it kind of in their way, which I anticipate being sneaky but bold.
Sneaky but bold. I mean, that just sounds like the Robb Stark credo. Nothing wrong with that. And in the preview, we hear that the Sea Snake was gravely wounded in a fight at the Step Zones. And his brother, again, Vaemond, shows up. You have Rhaenys, you have his brother Vaemond, who we met briefly here. Like, both of their children are conceivably dead as far as they know. So what the fuck does House Valerian do from here? Especially when you know that Rhaenys doesn't even think that, her supposed grandchildren are her grandchildren. And she's not wrong.
Boy, this is going to be really tough. I expect her to slip into a leadership role in terms of getting what she wants, and that's focusing on her daughter's children. I think that's where she's going to align herself to. But I think Vaemond is going to become bolder than he should be in his pursuit, and I don't expect it to be as successful as he wants it to be. I think Rhaenys is going to be the one kind of pulling the strings, so to speak.
So she's the HVIC, like she's the head Valerian in charge still.
Yes.
Do you think, like, because she was the one though that also understood that theoretically, like, her, grandchildren are not really her grandchildren or her grandchildren, is she still willing to, sever those ties?
I think yes, and I think her focus has to be on her daughter's children and what she's trying to accomplish with Driftwood. Unless there's something at play here that we don't know, where she can get a little bit of an edge for her and Lena's children, I just don't see it. I think she's kind of buried that a long time ago. She may have buried it at Wounded Knee.
Well, that's the interesting part, right? Like, what side are the Valerians going to come down on? Because they seem like to be like a very important house, because they're not guaranteed to go towards Daemon and Rhaenyra. But on the other hand, are they going to revert back to, Alicent, basically, to the Hightowers, because they're, that might not necessarily fit otherwise, whereas they've been more inclined to work with the Targaryens before, so I think I don't know, that's interesting.
You know what's interesting while I'm thinking about this is she made a point to kind of, and the show made a point to kind of show her, not necessarily, they made a point to show her saying, I've given up on my dream of sitting on the throne a generation ago, right? But when push comes to shove, will she want to do what she believes is the right thing, which is to either A, let Rhaenyra take the throne, or B, take the heir of Viserys with Aegon. So this with Aegon. So this is, I think that's going to be one of the more interesting decisions that get made over the course of this, is where does she land with her allegiance?
And you get the idea that she might actually try to do the right thing for the realm or whatever. So maybe her being the queen is the right thing for the realm. You saw her try to do that by the Driftmark line run through Lena instead of Laenor. Like, she's willing to admit, like, those, Laenor, love him. He is not the father. Very interesting. I mean, this is a very Thrones-ish end to the episode. I think it's setting up very good stuff for the last 3 episodes of the season. Jamie G, let's talk a little Sir Criston Cole, dude. He's come up, and we know that, like, him and Daemon aren't cool. We see that they're going to confront each other in the sneak peek. Obviously, Criston Cole beat him at that tournament. Then we saw Daemon grip him up. Any chance that this is going to, like, result in, I don't think Daemon's going to die, so I guess the death of Sir Criston Cole? Or B, this is an internet thing, but is there any chance that Jace, the oldest son of Rhaenyra, is actually Criston Cole's son?
That would be fascinating. I don't know. I mean, I guess we never got the answer on whether or not she took the
moon
tea.
tea.
I'd have to go back on the timeline and see, how much time passed before. But I think that they're setting this up, right? And they've been setting it up since early on in the series with Daemon and Sir Criston Cole, since, the whole tournament to what happened with Sir Criston Cole with Rhaenyra. Now Daemon's with Rhaenyra. I think this could be a strange kind of revenge plot. I don't see both of them making it through to the end of the season. And so that means I see Sir Criston Cole dying.
Nice. And speaking of making it through to the end of the season, does Viserys finally die in the next episode? Like, we see Otto sitting on the throne. It kind of feels like that should be it, but it probably won't be, right? Because we thought, like, Viserys was going to die next episode for, like, the last 5 episodes.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like this has to be the one, right? And then, but part of me wants me, knowing just the show and what they do with their previews and what they have done historically, I should say, it's probably something like he's just incapable of getting out of bed to actually be on the throne. And so therefore he he's not dead, but he's got his hand actually sitting on the throne conducting business. So I'm going to go with that, but I do believe that he has to die soon here, right? I mean, shit, he's like you said, 4 or 5 episodes too past his prime here.
Is there any chance we get like a little Nicky situation? I believe that was like Harvey Keitel, but somehow like Adam Sandler, something, whatever. But then like Harvey Keitel was the devil and he was sitting on the throne of hell. And eventually like he kept shrinking to like the point he was just a mouth or something like that. Like I could picture that as Viserys, right? He's just like a little mouth just flapping on the throne. And it's like, oh, chew your gum, girls, full Doublemint thing.
He's great reference. He's lost a lot of body parts. We'll see, what's left of him. It can't be much, right? I mean, I love this stuff. And we know if you want to listen to people talk about House of the Dragon that aren't having Basil Hayden and tons of drinks, you can, do that. And there's no lack of options. But if you want to listen to people get drunk on dragons, this is your show. We really appreciate that you checked out our show. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please remember to follow us, rate us, and leave us a comment, man. Tell us what you're drinking on. Tell us what your drink of choice is as you take on the dragons. We love talking about House of the Dragon, discussing it within the greater community. And, doing the like and subscribe thing helps other people find our show. So spread the wealth within the realm. Be the master of coin. We'll be here for the rest of the season and beyond to break down every single episode of House of the Dragon with drinking and, you guessed it, dragons. We also do other stuff. Mills, he's going to go ahead and tell you where you can find all of it.
Oh, man, this one time I woke up in the middle of a field and my head really hurt, and I'm still not sure what happened, but I'm pretty sure I was on a dragon. I was drinking. I think I fell off. I can kind of see my brain, like if I look but for the most part, what I remember, it was fun. Like I was on a dragon, I was drinking, I was like drunk on dragons, and it was a really good time. Like I looked on the Spotify or the Apple Podcasts or whatever, and I found this thing, Drunk on Dragons, and then I looked them up on the social media. They were at Drunk on Dragons, and it's like, oh, these guys seem like they understand how to drink on dragons. So we did that, and like they did other stuff. I found their YouTube channel at joeblowfootballshow.com, and we had a couple drinks while we watched that. There was a variety of things you could watch there. Actually made a couple bucks by watching some of it, so it was a real good time. I'd probably recommend you check it out. And next thing I know, I was here. That was it. That was the end of it all. And like I was drunk on a dragon, and I suppose you don't have to drink to enjoy being on a dragon, or be on a dragon to enjoy drinking or whatever, but I don't know, if you're gonna do stuff like being on a dragon is like cooler than not being on a dragon, right?
All that to say, yes, dragons are cool, and we will see you next week to cover episode 8 titled The Lord of Tides. That Drunk on Dragons episode will drop on Tuesday, October 9th. We'll see you then. Until then, cheers. Peace be you, 7 hells, all that good stuff.
Thanks again for checking us out. Drunk on Dragons is an unofficial show. We are not in any way affiliated with House of the Dragon, Game of Thrones, George R.R. Martin, HBO, or Warner Brothers Television. The views expressed here are those of the hosts only, and do not reflect the views of any other persons or entities. You can contact us at drunkondragonspod@gmail.com. Please remember to like and subscribe. We'll check you out again next time for more drinking and, of course, more dragons.